In today's video, we're going to look at vector and raster in your animations and what are the differences and when do you use which. So stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is Eon and welcome to my Start Animating YouTube channel. The channel that is specifically aimed at everyone that is new to animation, and if that is you, welcome, you are at the right place. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also click on that little notification bell so that you can get notified every week when I upload a brand new video. Now today we're going to look at the differences between vector and raster. Now this is especially when you create your very own characters and backgrounds for your animations, then it is very important to know the difference. So in today's video I'm going to show you the difference between the two and when do you use vector and when do you use raster. Okay, so let's move over to Clip Studio Paint. So I created two layers here. I've got my vector layer and I've got a raster layer. Okay, so let's look at raster first. Okay, so I'm gonna select the raster and then I'm just gonna go and select a pen tool and then I'm gonna draw. Let's just undo that and let's just make it black. And I'm using my mouse, I'm not on my drawing tablet, so now you can draw and you can then export this as a PNG. So if I remove the background, that is normally what you want, is you want to remove the background so it has a transparent background. So now you can draw layers, especially when it comes to if you drawing backgrounds for your animation. So if you draw it in layers, then you can have a parallax background, meaning that there's depth into your animation. Okay, so that is basically what you do with your raster. One thing to note is if you're gonna zoom in with raster, it will start to pixelate. Okay, that is something to remember. And then also another thing to remember is once you have drawn this line, it is fixed. You can't adjust these lines later on. It is fixed. If the line isn't straight or it's not perfect, then you have to undo it or erase it and you have to draw that line again. Okay, so that is a quick guide on raster if you draw on raster. Okay, so let's take that out. Now let's go to the vector layer and now let's do exactly the same thing. Okay, so let's just draw a few lines and just go crazy, and there you go. Okay, so now one thing, and I'm going to show this a little bit later, is if you're going to export this as a vector file, when you open it, when you zoom in, it won't pixelate. That is something very, very important to remember. With vector files, if you zoom in, it doesn't pixelate. It keeps those smooth edges. Okay, so that is very important to know when it comes to animation, because if you want to zoom in close, if you have a character and you want to zoom in close just on the eye, you don't want that character, the eye, to pixelate because you've zoomed in too far. Okay, you want it to be smooth. So this is very important to know regarding vector. Another thing is the lines that you've created can also be changed and manipulated later on. So for example, if I click there and let's just click there, I can adjust these layers or these lines. I can make changes. Okay, so that is very, very important as well, especially when it comes to animation. I will explain that a bit later when I explain when do you use vector and when do you use raster. Okay, so let's just clean this. Now I want to show you something. One thing that you can do with raster is you can add a lot of detail. You can add textures. For example, let's go to the raster and let's clean this. Now let's make it red and let's use a brush, and I'm just gonna use different layers, and let's just bring in this background. And let's just draw something, and you can see there's a lot of texture, and let's just make it a bit darker. And now we can add some layers to it to add some shadows, and let's make it light, and we can add maybe some highlights. So as you can see, you can play around with textures, and you can add shadows, you can add depth. So this is something you can do on your raster file. But now let me show you something quickly. If we're going to do exactly the same on the vector file, okay, so you can see, you can now draw, and let's add some shadows. So we add, and let's add some highlights here, exactly what we've done just now. Okay. So basically I've done the same, but now if I'm going to export this as a SVG file, let's do that quickly. Export vectors. Let's just call it vector, save. Okay, so I've exported this as a vector, but now if I go to a different drawing software and I'm going to import this vector file, watch what happens. You lose all your textures, okay? But what I can show you is if I'm going to zoom in, it stays smooth. It doesn't pixelate, okay? You can see these lines. Doesn't matter how much I zoom in, it stays. I've zoomed in 5,000%, but it still stays smooth. And what I can also do is I can now select a line, and I can still manipulate it and adjust that line, as you can see. But with raster, it doesn't do it. It pixelates, and you can't make any adjustments. So now you can imagine, when do you use raster and when do you use vector? Okay, so vector is very good to use on characters. If you design characters, vector is the way to go, because if you want to zoom in very close to the character, you don't want it to pixelate, and it will keep those smooth lines as well. Another reason why this is important, and I know you can do it with softwares like for instance Moho, is you can then animate these specific lines. Let's just undo there. So let's say, for instance, keyframe 1, that line is there. Keyframe 2, that line is there. Keyframe 3, it is there. And now you can animate that line. So now you can animate, maybe you're actually animating the lines. You're manipulating the lines to get the effect that you want. For instance, let's say you've got your head turning. So now you've got your outside of your head. So now as the character turns, you manipulate this line to keep the shape of the character's head, or to change the shape the way you want it so that it looks three-dimensional. With raster images, which is like PNG or JPEG or bitmaps, you can't do it. If you're gonna try and change the shape of those lines, is going to distort, it's going to pixelate, and it's not going to look great. So for characters, your vector is the way to go. It is much better. You have a lot more control. It is smooth. Now, raster is perfect for background painting. If you're creating backgrounds for your animation, then raster is the way to go. The reason for that is, obviously, you can add all of these textures in your background. You can add light, shadows, textures, and you don't really mind those smooth lines because it is in the background. So all you do now is you work in layers, and you just create what's in the foreground on a different layer, background different layer, so that you have that parallax effect, so that you can create depth. So a great way to look at it is vector is great for characters, and your raster is great for background design, because with backgrounds you want these textures, you want you want the depth, you want to create lights and shadows and all of that, you want the textures, So that is what you want in your backgrounds. But with your characters, maybe that is not something that you want. You want those smooth edges. You want to be able to manipulate the lines so that you can create more of a 3D effect, etc. So with Moho, for example, you have control over the vector lines. So if you've got a character, if you've got the head and you want it to move, then you can basically just manipulate that line, and you can make it as you turn sideways. Obviously your face gets longer because your face is thinner from the front than from the side. So now you can just manipulate those lines so that it changes shape according to the angle that your head is moving into. So this is, if you do basically character design or background design, you're gonna use vector or a raster. So again, vector is SVG files if you export it. Raster, you're probably going to use PNG files, because PNG will have the transparent background, where with JPEGs and bitmaps you don't have it. So you're probably going to work with PNG files when you work in raster. So guys, that is just a quick description between the two, the differences, when do you use the one, or what's the best uses for it. And yeah, this is more for your when you're drawing and creating your characters. It's not really animation based, but it is important to know, if you're gonna create your own characters and backgrounds, it is important to know the difference between the two and when to use the one over the other. So let me know in the comments below if you found this video helpful. If you are new to animation and you're still learning, I've got a free video training. It is absolutely free. In the description box below, there's a link. Just click there and you'll sign up, and it's absolutely free, and you'll work alongside with me, and by the end of the video you would have created your very own animation. And that is what I want. I want you to animate. I don't want you just to sit and watch videos. I actually want you to animate. That's the best way to learn. So if you're interested, in the description box below there's a link. Just click there, sign up, and you can work alongside with me with that free video training. And remember to hit the subscribe button, and also if you like this video, hit that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithms. So guys, that is it for me. I'll see you guys next week with another video. God bless and happy animating.